Okay, this video has been a little while coming. I've been meaning to film it for at least a week or more, but other things were getting in the way. I had decided when our family came down with COVID that I would make a video sort of just detailing how it was for us because I remember in the early days of the pandemic, I was watching videos of different people who had gone through COVID, what it was like for them, just so that I could be informed because it was something new. And from the beginning of this whole thing, honestly, I felt that the world in general was using what I often referred to as lizard brain mentality. In other words, not that people were lizards or whatever, but that they were using that part of their brain that just the first reaction is fear type of, sort of response. And I know that's an understandable reaction. It's a common reaction when people are afraid of something that they don't necessarily understand and not a lot is apparently known or at least told to people. And then what is told is a bunch of conflicting information, so you don't know what exactly is accurate. But a lot of times that sort of response to something can end up being very devastating and in the long run. And I feel that that is definitely the case with what has been happening to the whole world for the past almost year. Now, as of the recording of this, it's been about a year. I mean, certainly people knew about it before, but when I say almost a year, I mean when the entire world got kind of caught up in the panic and everything, and lockdowns happened. And I was always against the lockdowns because I knew that they were not going to be as temporary as we were all told. And I also knew that the long-term consequences for that were going to be much more severe for people as a whole than the virus would be. And also, there was a lot of not necessarily what I would consider accurate or believable or trustworthy. Maybe that's a better word. Trustworthy information that was being given to us, stats and things like that, especially when you kind of dug a little bit deeper into the situation and you found out certain things that you felt could contribute to the information being skewed. Anyway, whatever. Having said that, we were careful, just like we try to be careful when we know that there's, let's say, the flu, which we've all had, our family. And so we know how contagious that is, how deadly it can be, and how absolutely awful it makes you feel. So we were careful because who wants to get sick with anything? Whether it's just a cold, that can be an irritation enough because it affects how you feel. It can affect your productivity. You don't want to get sick unless you enjoy that kind of thing, which I don't think most people do. Anyway, we were careful, washing our hands, being, cautious about making sure we weren't around people that we knew were sick and with whatever, whether it was a cold or whatever. And so then we all got COVID. And it came to us through the household. A family member came and visited us. You know who you are. I don't think I've hidden it too much who you are. But anyway, at that time, everybody was perceived to be healthy. Everybody was okay, but it wasn't. I mean, that wasn't the case. So we got COVID and we basically rang in the new year with COVID. We all went and got tested. Well, except for my husband. It was my son, my daughter, her boyfriend, because he was here visiting from Puerto Rico, and myself. We all got tested. And that first test, only one was positive, and that was my son. So then we tried to be careful. Okay, let's stay away. We'll make sure he's upstairs. You know, he stays in his room as much as possible. And, you know, well, whatever. It didn't, we all ended up getting it. Every single one of us. And basically, the initial symptoms, because this is the kind of information I like to know about, is what are the symptoms for people, and for everybody it's different. Some people have gastrointestinal issues. We never really got that too much, really. I never did. And I think if my son and daughter did, well, they already have issues with their stomach and, you know, guts and everything. And so we don't know if it was from that or from the COVID. But our initial symptoms for pretty much everybody, all of the members under our, you know, all of the household members under our roof, was like a drainage. It wasn't anything, it wasn't a sore throat, it was just drainage. Oh, and we felt sinus pressure, a lot of pressure right here. But we could breathe through, and I could breathe through my nose. I think everybody else could as well. And just that drainage. So something that I forgot to mention in the video when I made it, I didn't realize until I started editing it, was that all of us, for the most part, in addition to the other symptoms that we had, we all pretty much lost our sense of taste. Maybe not 100%, but definitely it had been altered. And some of us lost our sense of smell. And the only way I can really describe it as, well, for me anyway, this is how I first noticed, was the day that I tested positive. Before we went to go get the test, I was eating my breakfast, which is something simple. I don't eat a huge breakfast, but it included peanut butter. And I was eating the peanut butter, and I noticed that the peanut butter tasted like, I could tell it had the consistency of peanut butter, but I couldn't taste the full flavor of it. It tasted like imitation peanut butter. That's about the best way I can think to describe it. It just, you know, they make that powder stuff that you add water to and mix it up, and it's supposed to be a peanut butter substitute. Well, I mean, it is a peanut butter substitute, but it's just not quite the same. That's what this was like. And it was really strange. It was odd. And well, that confirmed to me even before I had a positive test, which already felt like I was positive anyway, but that kind of confirmed to me, okay, well, and I don't recall losing my sense of smell, but others did. I don't think we all lost our sense of smell, but all of us did have our sense of taste affected. Maybe we all did. No, I didn't lose my sense of smell, so I can't say that we all lost our sense of smell. But yeah, our sense of taste was definitely not normal. Did I slur that? Yeah, I think I did. Our sense of taste was definitely not normal. Yeah, I think I don't know why I forgot, because that was one of the things I was going to try to remember. But this happens when I yammer on a bit too much. Sometimes I forget what I was originally wanting to say. So that's it for this. I think I'm going to go ahead and stop this video so that I can pick back up with the rest of it. And then my son tested positive, and then he got a fever. The day that he got his positive test, he got a fever. At that time, we did not have fevers. The rest of us didn't really have fevers. And I'm thinking that it's when you're getting to the point, I mean, it's very possible he had a fever when he tested positive, but we just didn't know it. Maybe it was kind of like 99.5 or something. And I think he was starting to feel not so great. And I think it wasn't until after, no, my daughter's boyfriend, I don't believe he had a fever at the time that he ended up testing negative. But basically, one person tested negative first, and then I went back the next day with my daughter's boyfriend, and I can't remember if she was tested too, but at some point, then he was positive. And then I tested positive, and we went back like about every day or every other day or whatever. By the time I tested positive, I already was 100% sure I had it because of the drainage, and I could just kind of tell something was off. And that day that I tested positive, I got the fever as well. My daughter, she never actually tested positive, because by the time I tested positive, and then a couple days later, my husband gets a fever, and then the next day, my daughter gets a fever. So they were never really tested positive, but we knew that they had it. So that was kind of the course of events. It was like sort of like dominoes falling, you know. We obviously we were infected even at the point of not having a positive result. It's just the virus wasn't in us enough for it to show up as positive. So after the fever came, for the most part, for me and for my son and my daughter and her boyfriend, my husband, out of all of us, my daughter's boyfriend had the easiest time. He never really had a huge fever. I don't think he got higher than 100. A couple or 3 weeks before that, he had come down with a fever one night, just like 100.5, and then it was better the next day. We don't know what that was about. No clue. I don't know. Anyway, that was weird. But he basically just had some discharge and stuff like that. And so he was feeling, he did okay. Just real easy for him. For myself, I had a fever for about a day and a half to 2 days. It got up to just under 102. So of course the fever in itself just makes you feel not so great. And so I laid, I would lay in bed. I would lie in bed when I felt the need, and then I would come and do some work, whatever I could do, and stay hydrated and, stuff like that. And then after about, when my fever went away, I started to feel okay again. The main thing for me was that the sinus congestion hung on forever. And I did have a bit of a cough, but it wasn't really coming from the lungs. I think it was sinus drainage, which can make you cough, because it never really felt like it was something that had gone into my lungs. If it did, it didn't do much of anything at all. I did buy one of those oxygen meter things that you can put on your finger and test your oxygen level, because I had read that people could be dangerously low with their oxygen levels and not know it with COVID. So I thought, well, just to be on the safe side, I'll just go ahead and get one of those. So I got one of those. Everybody did fine. Nobody dropped below 90. We didn't even get down to 92, 93. I think maybe the lowest we got was 95. But we have asthma in our family, so maybe that's just the way it would be for us, even when we're completely fine and not even sick. Our oxygen levels might do that. Anyway, where was I going with this? The sinus congestion hanging around was the main thing. Everybody was fine with their lung oxygen levels and everything. My son could not go back to work until he tested negative. And this is what we sort of found out. For him and for my daughter's boyfriend, it took about 2 weeks exactly before they finally got a negative result. From the time they tested positive to the time they tested negative was 2 weeks. So they had already gone through it. It was gone. It was fine and gone. With me, I never tested negative. I stopped going to test myself. With me, it was about, I think I'd gone 2.5 weeks and I was still testing positive, even though I was better. It's very possible I would still test positive, but apparently that's not uncommon. You can test positive for weeks or even months after you've recovered. You're considered recovered if you've gone, I believe, 3 days without symptoms or 3 days without a fever, without medication to keep the fever down, that sort of thing. So our fevers for my son, my daughter, her boyfriend, and me, our fevers were pretty much done within a day and a half to 2 days, 3 or 4 at the most, because my son, his fever came down, and then the next day it came back a little bit, like 99.5, whatever. So it hung on a little bit with him. longer than the rest of us. But my husband, his was the most, his hung on more, I would say, as the fever, as far as the fever goes. He didn't feel all that terrible, except in the first couple days when the fever, I think his fever spiked up to like 102.4. That was the highest any of our fevers got, as far as I knew, because I was regularly checking everybody, myself too. His had that spike, and I would say it was high-ish for at least 2 to 3 days. When I say high-ish, I mean more than 100. So it would regularly hover between 101.5 and 100.5, and it would kind of stay there. And then it came down into the 99.5. And I know that that's not really considered a fever clinically by a lot of doctors, but when that's not your normal body temperature, I personally consider that a fever. I personally consider that there's something still going on in your body. So he was kind of held back by that because he didn't feel terrible. He was tired. That's a common symptom. He did have a cough that was annoying him. It was a dry cough, but we think it was something related to his sinuses because he had a lot of sinus pressure. He never really felt like anything was in his lungs. My main concern with him was that he might end up getting a sinus infection and would have to go on antibiotics. So that was one of the reasons I got the oxygen thing, was because I wanted to see if it was mostly contained with his sinuses or if there was anything going down into his lungs. So the fever for my husband, and by fever, I am also including the low, like the 99.5 number, that didn't completely go away for him until about a week and a half. By the 2-week mark, I'm sorry. It was about, maybe about a week and a half. I think by the 2-week mark, his fever was finally completely gone, around there. So he was the one that sort of dealt with, I guess, the worst of it, because I think probably a fever is probably more annoying to deal with than some sinus congestion. But maybe that's debatable, because the sinus congestion was really annoying. And in a lot of my videos, you can hear it. It's very obvious that it's there, and the drainage and the coughing because of the drainage. For the most part, for us, the situation was not the worst that we have ever been sick. All of us have been more sick with other things than we were with COVID. The flu, definitely for me, the flu has impacted me much harder than COVID did. The last time, I had the flu at some point last year, I think, when I was in California, but that was a mild strain. I never knew that it was, I would have never guessed it was the flu. But all the other times I've had the flu, it has pretty much literally knocked me flat. Like, I can't do anything except lie on the couch or the bed. At the time it was the couch, because I was sequestering myself away from everybody so they wouldn't get sick, and they didn't. That was the last time I had the flu. Or I would come and sit in my office and just watch stuff. There was, like, my brain was on fire. I was just in agony. It was miserable. COVID wasn't anywhere near that for us. And also, I've had sinus infections that have made me feel much worse than how I felt when I had COVID. And also, several years ago, we had a myco infection that had gone into our lungs. I was definitely sicker with that. The sinus infection, the last sinus infection I had, I was sick with it for about a month, and it was constant coughing, fever, a lot of wheezing and junk going on in my lungs. That was the last time I was really super sick. And COVID wasn't anywhere near as bad as that. So I know that a lot of people have had it they've had much more severe issues. And then some people, they're totally asymptomatic. They never know they have it. And then other people, it just feels like an annoying cold is what it is. And for us, it was kind of that. It was more, it just felt like a cold, except maybe a skosh more severe than your typical cold. Nowhere near the level of the flu for us, or the sinus infections and myco, like I mentioned. So when this was happening, with us, I was re-examining how I thought about it. Has my mind changed about the lockdowns, being opposed to the lockdowns, very ardently opposed to them? And no, my mind had not changed. And even if something really severe and terrible had happened to one of us or more than one of us, my mind still would have been, I mean, my mindset still would have been the same. I have never been in favor of what's been going on because I see a whole lot of things very bad about it. It not just the extreme overreach by a lot of governments in general, especially mine, but livelihoods being completely destroyed for a lot of people, and a lot of other problems that are going on because of people being forced to be alone. You have suicide rates being an issue. Substance abuse is probably going up. You've got abuse, kids in abusive situations that's probably getting worse. It's just, I could go on and on about this, but the main purpose of this video was that I just wanted to kind of share what the experience was like for us. And I know that most people, the vast majority of people that have experienced this, have had a similar situation where, you know, it's just been, you're sick, you get over it, you're fine. We are, for the most part, generally healthy. We do have some health issues in our family. We have asthma. There's been conflicting information about whether people that have asthma could be at a higher risk. I don't know if that's the case or not. It really didn't bother our my asthma or anybody else in the family. They don't technically have it like I do, but still it's in their genes. They got it from me. And also my daughter's boyfriend is asthmatic. So I don't know. I'm not going to turn this into a big preachy thing, but basically my mindset about everything never changed, even when we got sick. And I know that it wouldn't have changed even if something worse had happened, because sicknesses and viruses and, you know, contagions, it's a part of our life, and we've always tried to sort of, you know, be careful about being exposed to things and people that might make us sick. So this was really nothing all that different for us as far as, you know, what happened. And we got it, we dealt with it, and we had decided, pretty much all of us in the family had decided even before we got sick that we were probably not going to get the vaccine. And after getting sick, I definitely don't have any plans at this point to get it. I know that having it doesn't keep you immune forever, because there are different strains. You could pick up different strains. You could have a relapse. At this point, enough time has gone by. I don't think there's going to be a relapse happening. If we end up picking it up again, it's probably going to be another strain or something like that. But, and I forgot where I was going with that. Oh, about the vaccine. No, we don't have any plans at this point to get it. I don't know when or if we ever will, but I don't know. Hopefully this information, this long ass winded information, will be useful to some people, just for curiosity's sake, just to kind of know what it was like for someone else, what they experienced, symptoms and all that. So anyway, I can't think of anything more to add to what I've already said. So I'll probably go ahead and wrap it up. I don't know how much editing I'll do on this. I feel like I did kind of ramble and got into more stuff than I meant to, but oh well, that was our COVID situation. That was how we started off the year. It was not fun, because it's never fun being sick, but you know, we did okay. We're fine. We're all better now. Everybody's back to work, doing our, you know, we're back to our regularly scheduled programming, basically. So that's it. And I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up now. Later, guys.